And I have to emphasize at this point, only the cleanest dredge sediments are allowed to be disposed of in these offshore sites. The same tests are also used to demonstrate that harmful levels of chemicals are not released into the water column when the sediments are mixed with water, i.e. when the actual dredging takes place, we don't create some sort of toxic stew in the water that's flowing by the dredge area. And we employ very specific types of dredge equipment that are designed to minimize the amount of sediment that's released. But there's another environmental aspect that we should cover and think about in this project, which is the beneficial aspects that natural gas and increased supplies of natural gas would bring to this area. Natural gas is the cleanest fossil fuel, producing less CO2 than oil or coal, and virtually no other pollutants of note. It does not pose a contamination risk to water or land. And in the context of our nation's and region's energy policy, which is strongly supportive of wind and other alternative energies, it provides an ideal, if not presently the only proven means of backing up those renewable sources of energy which, by their very nature, are intermittent. In this context, LNG is especially useful in New England as it's the only means by which natural gas can be stored and released into the gas grid on very short notice to fuel backup power plants. Since unlike the rest of the country, we have no other facilities in which we can store natural gas. We have no underground storage, which is what the rest of North America depends on. So, summarizing this first part of my testimony, let me repeat. LNG is safe. It's the least environmentally damaging fossil fuel. And an LNG terminal in Fall River would provide a strong economic stimulus during its construction and operations, both to the immediate area through the creation of well-paying jobs and a steady stream of tax revenue to local communities, but also wider benefit through helping lower the region's energy bills, the highest in the nation. Now, I'm almost done, but I'm going to spend a few minutes, if I may, the next area, which is to address some of the claims and statements made by others who've appeared in front of you, or which you may have seen covered in the local media. Frankly, when I reviewed the first two hearings, I was at a loss to know where to begin, so overwhelmingly accurate was much of the testimony being presented in front of you. So let me try to cover some of the highlights, or perhaps I should stay more carefully the lowlights, from those hearings and contrast the statements made with the facts that have been documented in connection with the permitting of this project. One area in which you heard much testimony was in regard to the loss of jobs that would occur if our project went forward. The primary source of this claim appears to come from the Aquidneck Island Planning Authority report, which was prepared in 2005 and was flourished very dramatically in front of you at the first hearing. A reading of that report, however, makes it clear there was only one reference to a loss of employment or loss of jobs in the entire report. On page 36, where the report stated, many tourism-based workers live in Newport and Middletown, and any loss of employment would adversely affect other areas of the economy in those communities. Nowhere does the report identify where jobs would be lost, how many would be lost, and why. I'd also note that this report, although it was prepared in 2005, was not submitted to the FERC until 2008, well after the analysis of the project had been prepared and published in the environmental impact statement for the project, and where the report's claims would have been subject to third-party scrutiny, analysis, and validation. I'd also note, as this report purports to address the economic impacts, the negative economic impacts, that the authors of the report do not include any economists, which I find kind of odd. You also heard numerous claims that LNG will explode on contact with water or create flammable vapor clouds traveling for miles, then igniting and exploding. None of this is supported by any reliable study I've ever seen or read. You were told the Sandia reports...
Could I interrupt you just for a second? When you make a claim like that, could you identify who made that claim?
On the claim of exploding on contact water, the Attorney General. The Attorney General also told you the Sandia report stated that thermal radiation from a fire following a spill from an LNG tanker poses a major threat up to 1 mile away, with nobody surviving and buildings collapsing from the ensuing fire. The Sandia report states no such thing. It identified that an intentional breach, that's a deliberate attack on an LNG carrier, represented a major risk up to a distance of 500 meters away, and that only in the absence of mitigation, i.e. with no security in place. 500 meters is not 1 mile. It's less than 1/3 of a mile. What Sandia also states, though, is that at a distance of 1 mile, that is the figure you were quoted, the risk to public safety, people and property, is low, meaning there is the possibility of minor injuries and minor property damage, again in the absence of any mitigation which could be deployed to reduce those impacts. You were told that federal exclusion zones around LNG tankers were established following the publication of the Sandia report and reflected the risks identified in that report. False. There's no such thing as an exclusion zone. The federal safety zone process, however, which covers the LNG tanker, has been in place for decades and reflects the need to control other shipping around a major vessel operating in confined waterways. The safety zones, the current safety zones, that is, for LNG tankers in Boston Harbor, were established in 1984, 20 years before the publication of the Sandia report. Common navigation practice dictates that large commercial vessels, LNG tankers, large oil tankers, other ships, large cruise ships among them, maintain safe separation distances between themselves and other large vessels, and obviously given the relative scale of LNG tankers to small ships or other big ships, you want to keep small ships away too. You were also told the same safety and security zones applied on the outbound leg because the cargo is left on board the tanker. Again, that's untrue. There's a very small quantity of liquid left on board that keeps the cargo tanks cool as it evaporates when the ship returns to the next loading port. But nobody believes it represents any risk that I have ever seen stated, and there certainly isn't enough cargo on board to give rise to any of the concerns addressed in the Sandia report. In fact, the quantity of cargo left on the tanks is so small it's well below the ship's waterline. It's effectively underwater. You heard the federal safety and security zones require foot patrols on land where the exclusion zone touches the land. Again, that's false. You heard that the town of Hull in Massachusetts spends tens of thousands of dollars a year for security for LNG tankers. False. Hull spends nothing. But the communities that do provide security in Boston Harbor are fully reimbursed for those services. And as a condition of our FERC authorization, we are obligated to reimburse any costs incurred by any communities or states as a result of a federally approved security plan. You also heard that there will be severe disruptions in the bay as a result of unannounced arrivals and prohibitions on nighttime transits. Again, completely false. There is no requirement to keep these vessels' movements a secret. Indeed, with the advent of automated vessel tracking systems, which all large commercial ships worldwide must carry, anyone with access to the internet can determine where each LNG tanker is on any given day, as well as the next port of call and the time it will arrive there. We have no concerns with sharing that information with the other bay users so nobody can claim they were surprised or disrupted. Also, following a short period of familiarization and allowing the pilots to get comfortable with ship handling, we expect that we would be permitted to pursue nighttime transits, as is the case in Boston Harbor. There's no prohibition on nighttime transits, and obviously once those go into effect, most if not all of the issues of interference with any form of daytime recreational traffic will tend to disappear. In addition, we have committed to avoiding transits during peak periods. That's during the peak daylight hours on weekends and holidays between Memorial Day and Labor Day. On the environmental side, you heard that the sediments we plan to dredge are toxic, that sediment plumes will flow miles downstream, that 73 acres of flounder habitat will be lost. Of these, the only accurate statement is the loss of flounder habitat, although you also heard others testify that spawning habitat is not the factor which puts flounders at risk. Overfishing does. For the rest, exhaustive and expensive testing under the direction of the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has shown the sediment is clean enough to be disposed of in the open ocean, the most stringently regulated disposal process that dredge material